So yeah, let's. Oh, that's.
And there he is in game.
Beautiful. I love the armor, by the way. Before we dive into the kit,
oh my gosh.
I love the armor. I cannot stop.
3D art modeling team, Quinn, they all just do such a fantastic job. The color that comes out, the concept art also really helped kick this off.
The entire art team obviously smashed it on this one. He's got such nice details. We're trying to make some historical inspiration in these Arthurian characters, but we also want to amplify them up to, make sure they feel like they fit on the battleground of the gods. So he's got a very, ornate weapon and shield, and then his armor has a lot of cool intricacies to it while still being functional.
And one quick thing to know before we get into the thick of it, one part of Lancelot's lore too was that he was brought up by the Lady of the Lake. Which gave him a little bit of more of like these magical traits, these magical artifacts even that were given to him. And we wanted to play up on that, both in his model, so because he's like got this sweet horse on his shield, which will come into part of his gameplay, as well as into his kit as well. So he's got a little bit of a superhuman traits to him.
He is one of the Arthurian knights that has specific supernatural qualities listed in the various texts because he grew up in that Fey realm, grew up amongst other magical beings, and that possibly is the reason why he is such a gifted fighter.
For sure. But
I say, y'all keep teasing about this kit. Let's just get right into it. Like, show us the moves. Let's run through it.
Face me. Killing spree. For a champion.
Oh yeah.
All right.
That's it. Okay, so we saw a lot of stuff.
We saw a lot of different stuff.
More than 4 abilities.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about that in a second.
Explain yourself, but
one
slowly.
thing to keep in note, just because it's always important. We've got Tower Killer on.
We've got. He does not actually do 5,000 damage per base.
He doesn't one-shot people. That's just our fun dove commands. But he will not be hitting you for 54-10 damage with his basic attacks, even at level 20. But yeah, we can get started with the different parts of his kit.
Excellent. I mean,
is a stance switcher.
Let's just start. Lancelot, he's got the lance going for him.
You're right.
What's the basic attack chain?
That's pretty important. Yeah. So his basic attack, the main thing we want to shout out, is he is using a lance. It's a weapon that's a little bit larger than normal, and because of that, we do have the extended melee attack range that we do give to certain gods with larger weapons.
Yeah.
So he's going to be hitting from outside the normal melee attack range.
And you also might notice the in-combat and out-of-combat animations on Lancelot, where when he's recently attacked, he's got his shield and lance very up, but he eventually relaxes. Yes, and it looks very nice. And huge shout out to the animation team for
that is the hardest part. That's the hardest part about working here is trying to like if somebody's like, what can we do better? I'm like, I don't know. People just perform all the time. It's crazy. So let's move on to the movie.
And there's one thing that was added right there as well, just because I guess there's 1+1 feature. That the third hit of his basic attack chain is a cleave, so we'll do a multi-hit. Will help him out in the jungle. And I thought it felt fitting for the kind of the sweeping lance.
The sweep, a different motion instead of just all pokey.
Instead of all jabbing. All right, so let's get into the passive, Camelot's Quest.
Camelot's Quest. This is a little bit more of a simple one, which is nice to see with the rest of his kit being a little bit more complicated.
Fair enough.
Did you count?
Lose count.
But so Camelot's Quest, it's just a stacking, something that he gains power over time. Lancelot receives a stack for a god killer assist, and 1 stack for every several minion kills. When he gets stacks, he's got the 2 states, the mounted state and the unmounted state.
Yeah.
So while he's specifically in the mounted state, each stack provides increased movement speed. When he's in the unmounted state, each stack will provide something a little bit more unique. It's reduced basic attack damage, but only taken from directly in front. So if you hit Lancelot from the sides, from the back with basic attack damage, you're going to be doing the full amount. But if you're hitting direct, if you're like dueling him and you're hitting him straight on, you're going to be doing actually a little bit of reduced damage.
Don't joust the jouster. You're going to get jousted.
Yep. So playing a little bit with those jousting duels and the shield motifs.
I hate to see him on the joust map. It would not be a joust I want to be a part of. But I also love how you brought in from jousting that whole face your opponent head on thing.
Right.
Super cool. Next up, Piercing Thrust.
Yeah, so this is Lancelot's first ability while not mounted. Pretty simple here. Lancelot dashes forwards. You can see it's kind of got 2 components in this target here. It's almost like the tip of a sword or a tip of a lance
it's got a
in a way.
Shape.
He actually will stop towards the end of that rectangular component while he continues to extend forwards with his lance to the end of the inverted cone, the tip. He hits and he dashes through enemies, and if he hits an enemy, he actually gets a second fire of this as well.
Got it.
It's not a very long range, so it's not really great for escaping a fight. He has other tools that'll help him there.
Yeah.
But if you want to weave through the battle, again, it's playing around with those agility feels. we talked about how it didn't feel right for him to be a warrior. It didn't really feel right for him to be a guardian. As an assassin, we wanted to make him feel like he's going to be darting through the battlefield, right? That's the kind of, when King Arthur's leading the charge, Lancelot's kind of all around, kind of dueling and taking out swordsmen and fighting all around him.
I mean, and that makes sense too, you know, with the whole using the lance. Like, it's not like a sword. It's a lot harder to swing around. You're really looking for that one precise shot that get where you need to get and make your strike. So,
and with the refire here and the stance changing, you're going to see a little bit of a higher skill cap, I'd say.
Absolutely.
On this assassin. So you can really, you know, we've seen some really cool things in playtests of people using this ability in all sorts of unique ways to make sure they hit the right targets or do a hit and a dodge. Lots of flexibility on this game.
And you can use that first part if you hit an enemy, and then stop, use other parts of your kit, and you have a few seconds to use that again. So you are not forced to do 2 in a row. And it's any enemy, so you can help. You can actually utilize this in the jungle to help clear as well.
Oh, handy.
Good reminder to have.
Yeah,
minions and jungle minions count as enemies.
Yep. But yeah, let's go into the second ability.
Let's do it. Skilled strikes.
So we're talking about his, the different things that he can do with his lance and his shield. So this is kind of a 2-part ability here, where Lancelot has a small cone area in front of him, where he will slam enemies in front of him with his shield, and then he goes from there into a swiping attack with his lance. There we go. So
Nice.
a few things you can see the target are changing. First things first is that slam of the shield will actually knock back enemies, kind of more towards the end of what will be the second part of that ability, because the second part is a larger cone that's split into 2 parts. That outer part will actually deal bonus damage if enemies are within that. So again, playing a little bit with the agility, playing with the skill and precision of Lancelot is you don't actually want to use skill strikes and just W key and run into your enemies. You actually want to make sure that you're getting them into the right spot. So maybe utilize the AO1, the first ability to get into the fight, utilize the skill strikes to push them, and then use the second refire of the dash to get right back into the fight.
It encourages you to stay in that sweet spot of his basic attack range, where the other assassin potentially can't even hit you back. Because you have the longer basic attacks, which is a really powerful effect in Smite that I think is often overlooked. There are a few characters that have it, Willix, Achilles, Guan Yu, I believe, and it is really powerful. And if you are really careful with your positioning, it can do a lot of good, especially in a one-on-one. So this ability gives you that bonus damage for hitting in that sweet spot and kind of puts that enemies back in that sweet spot, so you can maintain that right distance from them.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that's really cool too with the way its passive works. Is you're incentivizing facing your enemy head on and getting them directly in front of you, like face to face. I think that's incredible. So and yeah, the combo potential for that is unreal. I'll be excited to see that utilized in the game. So next up, kind of a transitional ability. It looks like we have mounts up, which I believe starts the fun second half of Lancelot.
Exactly. So what are we going to have? Lancelot's not Lancelot without the jousting motifs, without his horse.
You can't joust without a horse. They don't just run at each other.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make sense. And we really wanted to play up with this. It's something that we mentioned in the dev blog. It's something that we thought was really important to who Lancelot is.
It was the initial idea behind Lancelot, was like there was not going to be a Lancelot without
the horse.
Without a horse.
It's something that everyone kind of expected to see, and we weren't going to disappoint. And with that, we wanted to make sure that that's kind of why he ended up being a stance switcher, is because we wanted to make sure that he excels on the battlefield without being on a horse. Right? He's not a cavalry charger, and that's going to be really, really important to this stance.
Yeah.
He's not going to be in mounted combat a lot. That's not his role in a fight. Right? It's to actually get down and dirty and use his lance. But to traverse the battlefield, to kind of engage fights, he's going to be on his horse. So this ability mounts up, puts him onto his trusty steed, and there's a couple of different things going on. One, of course, it's a movement speed buff. He's going to be gaining increased movement speed. His horse is going to help him move a little bit faster than he can travel himself. And a second thing is he gets a health shield. So you can see when he's dismounted and he mounts up for the first time, there'll be a shield that kind of gains over time up to a max.
Okay,
the reason why that's important is because if that health shield is ever depleted, he's instantly dismounted by his enemies. And he can
strong counterplay.
Yep.
There.
Yeah.
Because again, the goal is not for him to stay on the battlefield forever. Now, if you have God mode, of course, that's going to help
all the
out
cheats
a lot.
on
It will be a little hard, yeah.
But when he does take,
It's okay.
no, don't worry about it. When you do take that max health shield as damage, you will be dismounted by your enemies. And similar to a Wheelix, if you do just want to, cancel input to get off your horse, you can do that without incurring a cooldown on the mount up ability too.
Okay, that's awesome, yeah. So, I mean, obviously when you're mounted up, your abilities kind of take on a new face, starting with Shining Gallop.
Shining Gallop is the first ability while mounted. So the reason why I gave a lot of that preamble early is because the other thing that's important is he is not the mounted combatant all the time. both of his main abilities in the stance will actually dismount Lancelot and put him into the fray. This is Lancelot's kind of only poke tool, and Shining Gallop will actually have Lancelot send out the horse in front of him in a line as he dismounts in place. The horse, taking on some of those ethereal qualities, again, he's got a little bit of that magic enhancement going on, will actually be able to pass through all enemies and walls, slowing them as it tramples over them.
As it tramples over them I don't know why, that was just a great way to end that sentence, because, yeah. Awesome. So next up, Crashing Dive, another mounted ability.
Crashing Dive, the second mounted ability, again, will actually end up dismounting Lancelot. First, Lancelot will surge upwards off of his horse, rooting enemies in a small circle around him, dealing no damage. But then Lancelot actually crashes back down into the fight, dealing pretty heavy damage in a larger circle around him. And you can see there he's kind of got a little bit of movement while he's in the air to position himself well. You can go omnidirectional with that. And yeah, like I said, it'll be a root on the way up and then damage on the way down. The root is a very, very short duration. It's just kind of to play with aesthetic, play with the team, give him a little bit of crowd control from the mounted state.
And the animation team did such a fantastic job with him mounting up and dismounting, and these abilities feel really good. The timings and the weight behind his attacks feel great, and I know the tech art team and engineering team also had to do a lot of work. When we have to
so thankful.
make two characters work as one in Smite,
tandem,
it's a very complicated process, and each time we do it, we've been getting better at it. We made some really big technical strides, so big shout outs to those teams as well on Lancelot, and these two abilities, they feel really great to use.
Yeah, like you said, the animation is just incredible too. Like it doesn't feel like a half-hearted attack. Like you really see him put his whole body into the motions and animation. So,
and you reminded me as well, talking a little bit about the mounted state too, is that as we said in the blog post, Lancelot's mounted state is going to have him constantly moving forwards, very similar to Hachimon and Guan Yun's ultimates.
Right.
You are not strafing, you are not maneuvering your horse like a Wheelix. You have a limited turn radius, so if you can see here, go ahead and turn as sharply as you can. That's what it is. It is limited. In the jungle and in other game modes, you want to make sure that you're utilizing your turn radius as best as you can, but his third ability kind of helps that a little bit, and it's very niche. It's going to be something that you don't see as often, but it's super helpful after your ultimate, and that's just quick turn. And all it does is it just turns you. It pivots you. You kind of stop in place.
Usually the cooldown is longer than this.
Yeah,
so a little bit longer.
That's a good thing to note as well. Quick turn is actually the only ability of the three that has a cooldown. And I'll mention the reason why for that later. But Quick Turn has a 4-second cooldown. It's pretty short.
Well, it's because it doesn't dismount you, right?
Exactly. It doesn't dismount you. And that's really important when we get to the ultimate. But again, all this does is purely like mechanically functional. You're just turning around, you're pivoting. Helps you maneuver around the battlefield. And you can even pivot and juke some abilities, because if you're moving forwards all the time and you see enemies kind of in front of you, go ahead and use this to turn right back around.
If a Ra is trying to lead you and hit you with a Ra ult, you can just whoop, quick turn and just juke it. And it's really fun when you pull it off.
And one last mechanic as well, similar to I believe Guan Yu, is if you actually hold the back button, even though you're moving forwards, you will actually slow down in your acceleration. So your top speed will actually be lowered if you hold down the back button while you're mounted.
That's cool.
Full horse controls.
Yeah,
full horse
if
controls.
You're trying
Lancelot's a
to
master.
Navigate the jungle a little more, you can slow it up for a turn.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super excited to see that. All right, so it looks like we've gone through the regular abilities. We've gone through the mounted abilities.
Just one more.
Just one more.
Just one more because it's going to be tied. The Grand Joust is Lancelot's ultimate ability. He can use this while mounted or while unmounted, and it'll do the same thing, which is basically Lancelot's going to be rearing up as his horse is preparing to charge ahead. During this time, there's going to be actually a jousting list that is created ahead in an area. You can see that rectangular area. The jousting list itself, once deployed, will cripple enemies in that area. And after that's created, Lancelot will then charge ahead with his horse, dealing damage to all enemies that he hits. You have movement control in this, and you actually have a faster turn radius when you're in this area too, damaging any enemies that he comes in collision with.
That's awesome. I love that you can see the indicator.
There it is. So you can see you have your own turn mechanic. Enemies in the area are just crippled. There's no damage associated to the field itself. And like I said, if you're zooming past enemies because you're charging ahead, it's very useful to use Quick Turn after that to make sure that you can get right back into the fight.
Yeah. And might I add, just one of those design things, I see him passing over flags and the flags folding up and getting out of the way of the character. Like, the attention to detail never ceases to amaze.
Shout outs to effects as well. Shane did a fantastic job on Lancelot. He really, really worked hard. And especially even with the glowing shields that you can see when he has that health shield while he's mounted.
Yeah.
A lot of things that he worked on were Lancelot really came together from all the different art teams and tech teams.
True.
Now this ultimate has one extra feature that is really important for really doing the full meta min-maxing of Lancelot, which is it also will mount you.
Exactly.
So you can effectively heavily decrease the ability cooldown of your mounted abilities by working your ultimate into the mix. So you can either, you can use your mount up and then use a dismount attack and then immediately ult afterwards, or vice versa, to effectively get 2 dismount attacks in a short succession.
Exactly. And that's why we mentioned the cooldown on the first 2 mounted abilities isn't there. It's actually 0 cooldown. So that way, if you're utilizing the 2 different mount-up mechanics, you can use those dismount mechanics as well. So, we're talking about this gameplay and playstyle a little bit. Lancelot's very much get into the fight and, do as much as you can in there and get out if you can.
Yeah.
Weave through the battlefield, use those movement mechanics. You don't really want to mount up to try and leave a fight unless you're using ultimate, because again, that shield starts off really small, right? So if you're using that and someone just hits you with a quick basic attack, you're being dismounted immediately, and now you've lost.
So you're saying
a
he
lot of that.
will try to 100-0 me?
He will absolutely try his best.
He's kind of an all-in
He's
assassin.
an all-in assassin.
Does he seem like the type of person that would run away? I mean, come on.
No.
Right. No, he very much is, and as Clumsy mentioned, this ability is much better at getting in as opposed to getting out. But it's also a very unique dynamic for junglers. A lot of junglers are used to leaping or blinking.
Or blinking,
which
right,
you
exactly.
cannot do on the horse. So
That's a good
instead,
point.
you're running at people. If you just run right at them, they're going to see you coming, and you're going to take some hits before you get in. So you have to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more sneaky, potentially dismounting and mounting up at some unexpected times. Try to change up your playstyle so that your opponent doesn't predict you as well.
Exactly.
This character, though, has a lot of abilities and has refiring abilities, so if you can get those proper mix-ups in there, you will leave your opponent really feeling like they're in the back foot. Like, what is he going to do next? I'm just struggling to keep up.
Yeah.
If you're a good Lancelot, so a lot of skill expression on this character.
You mentioned something pretty important as well. While you're mounted, you can't use your relics. You cannot ward. You can use consumables, but you also cannot basic attack. So you're just using kind of those few abilities and consumables, similarly to a Wheelix in that way, until you dismount and get right back into the fight.
As is consistent with our other mounted combatants.
Yeah, a carrying over trait. Well, yeah, like you said, this is definitely a character who it seems benefits the head-on challenge in fighting. So there will be a lot of jousting, I imagine. I mean, as you can see now, I've been doing a lot of jousting, but I'm not surprised. He seems to like his Lancelot. So, hey-oh, I made a joke.
You know I'm the original joust master, that's for sure. So Lancelot is one of my favorites. But no, this character is really interesting to play, has a lot of things to learn, a lot of rewarding in-hand cancels, basic attack cancels, and if you're wise with your ability procs, he really can have a really powerful output. But it's not easy to execute. Like a lot of precision and aim required in an assassin, which is another thing that was kind of a theme to his kit, to the idea of the lance and the joust. So we really wanted to design with that goal in mind.
And not only that, but there's also just these combos. Once you learn them, I'm sure it'll be very intuitive. But obviously, you have to learn the combos. You have to learn how to properly mount up, mount attack, ult, mount attack, use your dashes, use your
Absolutely.
So it's gonna be a lot of really awesome mechanics to get a hold of. And once I think people start to get a hold of that, this is gonna be a very formidable opponent.
I'm very excited to see people pick up Lancelot and learn to play him over time. One thing, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Be very careful mounting up in combat. It will get you killed, because if you're dismounted with that shield, I'm expecting to see a lot of PTS and on-release where people are trying to mount up in panic as soon as they're in a fight, because they think they're going to use that as a movement ability to get away. Get dismounted and then die. That will happen. Be very careful.
Sure it will.
And the ultimate is really cool because it's a huge cripple field, which is a relatively new effect for us. We don't really have that effect of that size and scope. So you can shut off movement abilities in a relatively large area. You can use it across the tower area to prevent people from leaping back to safety or engaging on you. So I could see him being a big pro pick specifically for that, as to counter other movement abilities.
Oh, and I feel like there's always just the one more thing. Something that was really important as well to make sure that Lancelot functioned well in the middle of fights is that after his ultimate, you will actually regain a full health shield for being mounted. So you can see right there, if you start mounted from, if you start your ultimate from the unmounted state, or even if you have a low shield while you're in the mounted state, it will refresh that to give you a little bit of leeway after you've used your ultimate, in case you've taken some hits during that time.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see that ult used not only for team fights, but because you can choose your path in it and veer out of it if you need to. I'm excited to see it used as like an escape tool. Like if somebody ends up behind you in lane, you can dash and just shoot off into the jungle and you're just gone.
And they can't leap after you.
Yeah, you're just gone. So one last little piece of information that I have that I think is fun that has nothing to do with the lore or the kit or basically anything is that our animators and effects team and like people who worked on Lancelot affectionately deemed the horse Bubbles.
So we knew we were going to get the question. What's the horse name?
I saw this on the notes and I was like, I think the last time we talked about this is like Clumsy design team. Do you guys agree with this? And I was like, if this is what everyone wants it to be, that's just gonna.
There was not a universally agreed upon historically accurate name for his horse, right?
Yeah.
He and likely in reality he rode multiple different horses. You know, potentially he didn't have just the same horse for his whole life, etc. But the internal dev team, and since we always get pushed to name the pets, the internal dev team went ahead and got a step ahead of you and named the horse Bubbles.
Yes. So
that is official as of today.
So there we go. The important questions, the day zero.
Well, if we're going on that side of things, you can effectively say that this is like Lancelot's cart in a way, So we kind of
don't hurt the people.
A Smite cart 1.5 in there.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we can. If we ever bring back Smite cart, he can just be on the horse the whole time.
There you go.
It won't happen though. So.
Yeah. Oh. All right, well, with that, Payne, let's move on to some of the other skins that will be releasing with Lancelot, starting with Pride of Avalon Lancelot.
I love these recolors. I mean, his base colors are